the rock of our salvation. My hope is in the promise of your blood. My support within the rage of flood. Even in the tempest I can see away our sins? Who takes away our sins? Oh God, makes us alive again, makes us alive again. Oh, the Lamb of God, who takes away our sins, who takes away our sins. Oh, the Lamb of God, makes us alive again, makes us alive It's my victory. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you, Lord, for this opportunity that we can come here and gather this morning just to hear your words. Lord, I pray that so many lives are touched by this message. And I pray that we can just be ushered into 2019 with so much success. In the name of Jesus. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Happy New Year. I'd like to welcome you guys this morning. The beginning of the year always is a great time for resolutions. It's kind of a time to start over. I'd like to ask you guys, will you raise your hand if you've made a resolution in here or more than one? Wow, not many of you. Some go-getters we have in this room. All right, raise your hand again so I can see you a little bit better. Okay, maybe a few. This side just said no, they're not interested. All right, let me ask you this. Now, raise your hand if you made a resolution that has something to do with diet or exercise. Okay, all of the hands that went up prior, those hands went up. Anybody decide they're going to quit smoking? No, just keep burning them. Nobody cares. All right. Now, raise your hand if you are going. I had my hand up. I don't smoke. I quit in 2012. All right. How many of you are going to spend more time with your family or work less? Anybody make that commitment? Okay, good. What about you're like, we're going to spend more time with family but smoke in the process? All right. Raise your hand if you have financial goals. You're going to get out of debt or you're going to do some of that stuff. Good. Now there's other hands coming up. Some of you didn't have resolutions, but now all of a sudden you do. All right, what about growing closer in your relationship with Christ? Being in church? Good. Now, a lot of you have your hands up. Did you not understand the first question? Was it not clear? All right, now the big question, has anyone broken a resolution yet? Okay, good. Honesty that's in the room right now. So we're beginning a vision series. We like to begin the year every year with a vision series because it's going to give you guys perspective about the direction that we are going in 2019. 2018 was an absolutely incredible year for our church. We baptized 29 people. The majority, and you know what? Those kind of numbers are exciting, but to me what's more exciting is that the majority of those people, all but one, are actually still in our church. So what that shows is that we are actually discipling people, which is extremely significant and extremely important. We've also grown numerically. There have been a lot of great things that God has done. Small groups have grown and continue to grow, and God has just shown us a lot of stuff. He's taught me a lot of stuff from a leadership perspective. So it's been a very good year. 2018 was great. 2019 is going to be even better. And what we're going to do over the course of the next 6 weeks is we're going to talk about what 2019 is actually going to look like. There's this really funny period between Christmas and New Year's where you have 5 or 6 days that kind of feels like a really, really weird time where you don't know what to do except for maybe rest. And for me, this is really a time to gather perspective, to be able to reflect on where we have been in 2018 and look at that, and then to really be able to grab a hold of what we're going to be doing in 2019. Another thing that I want to tell you guys is that a vision series is a little bit different. If you're new to the church, a vision series is a little bit different than what we typically do with the other series that we do throughout the course of the year. For example, what we generally do up here is we teach for the benefit of personal and corporate growth. For example, we'll have a topic or a particular passage in a series, and we're really working towards some ends. And I'm not saying that this series doesn't have a lot to do with personal growth, but it's a little bit different because what we're actually trying to do over the course of the next 6 weeks is paint a picture of the future that you're able to see, so that very specifically you understand the direction that we are going as a church. Also, usually, there'll be a challenge at the end of some kind, or what you might call application, a way that you can grow as a believer. And again, I'm not saying that that is not going to be present, but again, what we're trying to do is help you imagine future possibilities regarding who we are and who we want to be as a church as we look not only at 2019, but as we go even further into the future. And I'm very excited to say that whenever we talk about this stuff, we expect nothing short of a revolution. God is going to do absolutely incredible, miraculous things in 2019 that I firmly believe people in this area have never seen before. But the question is, where are our hearts as we talk about this kind of work? Where is our mindset? What frame of mind are we coming from when we look out at this? And the reason I say that, this is not easy for me to say, but this is the way that I feel the majority of the time when I look at churches, when I look at people who call themselves Christians. We believe God saves people's souls. Like the majority of you in here would identify yourself as a Christian or as someone who grew up in church. We do believe that God saves people's souls. We do believe that God sends people to heaven. So we look at all that, and all that's great, but we don't believe God does extraordinary work in our present world. So it's really easy for someone to say, I made a profession of faith in Christ whenever I was 16 years old, whenever I was 25 years old, when I was 4 years old, and I believe that whenever I die, I'm going to go to heaven. That's the viewpoint that a lot of you in here probably have right now. But the problem that we tend to have is that we don't believe that God does the same kinds of things in our present world that God actually did in the first century world. And this is a real serious issue. The reason this is a serious issue is because we are often saying, when we say, God, we don't believe that you can do these things, and we're not going to practice and direct faith in that area, God often is not going to do that work. Because what God is looking for, more than anything in our lives, is a real, strong, activated, concrete faith that the impossible is in fact possible. So some of the things that we're going to roll out over the course of the next few weeks, you're going to say, your mind is automatically going to tell you, well, God can't do that. This is Eastern Kentucky. This is Central Appalachia. We've never seen those kinds of things happen. These have been problems here for years. The church has been this way for so many years. There may be some people that want to get really active and involved, but the majority of people are not going to sense that. We believe that we serve a great God, and we believe that we serve a God that can do the impossible. So what I want to do is I want to give you an analogy, a story this morning that is going to apply exactly to where the majority of us are when we look at that statement, where the majority of us are and where we actually need to be as we start to talk about vision. So what's going on here? A little bit of context. We're in Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to look at verses 53 through 58. This is a translation, the Message. But before reading this passage, I want to explain a few things. Jesus has been traveling and giving some of his most significant parables to date at this time. From village to village, town to town, Jesus is going to all these places, and lives are changing everywhere. Miracles are happening. The impossible is being seen. You have the 12 disciples that are dedicated and committed to following Jesus, but then all of a sudden you have all of these other men and women that are coming from these villages, and they're starting to follow Jesus as well. So all of a sudden, everything is turned upside down. And then what Jesus does, as he's been to Galilee, as he's been to Capernaum, as he's been to Bethsaida, as he's been to Cana, as he's been to all these other towns, what Jesus does is he goes to his hometown. And this is where we are today. And this is what the passage says. When Jesus finished telling these stories, or his parables, he left there and returned to his hometown and gave a lecture in the meeting house or in the synagogue. He made a real hit, impressing everyone. All of these people are used to little Jesus. 10-year-old Jesus, 12-year-old Jesus, 15-year-old Jesus. Jesus is returning home, and he's doing these absolutely miraculous things that no one could have ever anticipated. We had no idea he was this good, they said. How did he get so wise, get such ability? But in the next breath, and this is what I want you to pay attention to, in the next breath, they were cutting him down. So they're talking about all of these miraculous things that he is doing, how Jesus does not even appear to be human because the things he is doing is so incredible. But this is what they are saying in the next breath. We've known him since he was a kid. He's the carpenter's son. We know his mother Mary. We know his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. All his sisters live here. And listen to this statement right here. Who does he think he is? Who is this guy that grew up with us, that we saw as maybe an average Joe that then goes into the wilderness, he's baptized, he goes into this public ministry, he's doing all these incredible things. You see where they start to fall in to this area of doubt. Who is it that he actually believes that he is? They got their noses all out of joint. But Jesus said a prophet is taken for granted in his hometown and his family. He didn't do any miracles. This is the critical part. He didn't do any miracles there because of their hostile indifference, because of the fact that they made a decision among themselves. We are not going to believe. We are not going to trust. So understand this about Jesus. Jesus did not lack the ability to exercise his power at any time. In 2019, Jesus does not lack the ability at any time to unleash the miraculous, to unleash everything that needs to be done. But he chose not to exercise his power in the face of unbelief. Whenever doubt is going on, when people are questioning, can God actually take care of me? You see, Jesus did not force himself upon people who did not want him. And Jesus is not the kind of miracle worker that is just going to show up like a circus person and do all these miracles just to try to impress his viewers. Jesus looks for one thing in people, one thing only, and it's genuine faith that moves us into a relationship with him. Genuine faith that is going to move us into a relationship with him. Again, often we believe in this God that is going to send people to heaven. We believe in this God that is going to take care of us in the afterlife. But we don't believe in the God that can cure people from addiction. We don't believe in the God that can manage our depression or anxiety. When our finances look really, really rough and we're not exactly sure what to do, we have a really, really hard time believing in God and putting our faith into practice in those moments. So as we look at resolutions and as we talk about 2019, and also as we unravel what our vision is going to look like, there is a challenge that I have for you guys this year. Exercise real faith, genuine faith, life-changing faith, transforming faith, that God wants to do the incredible work in your life, your community, and your church. And if you make a commitment to be in this place in 2019, and you put all your eggs in one basket, and you make the decision that this is what you are going to focus on for yourself, for those around you, and also your involvement and your participation in the life of your church, everything is going to change for you. This doesn't mean that there is not going to be suffering. This doesn't mean that there aren't going to be problems. This doesn't mean that at every turn you're not going to be given the opportunity to give up. All of those things are going to be present. But if you take this challenge, it's going to change everything. Because when you activate this as an individual, and especially whenever we activate this corporately as a church, the impossible happens. That's when everything gets turned upside down. That's when all of the doubters, all of the skeptics, all of the people that say there is no God, starts to look at Destination Community Church and say, what in the world is going on there? How is it that they are able to do these things? How is it that they are able to experience such a movement like we've never seen before? So what you're going to hear over the next year and possibly beyond that is a lot of commotion. And you noticed this morning as you walked into the lobby. If you've been on social media on DCC's page, you've noticed these words. But words that you are going to hear very often this year are the words reach, serve, and grow. And what I'm going to do today, for our purposes today, is just introduce this to give you a little bit of an idea as to where we're coming from. And then what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 5 weeks unpacking every single bit of this so you understand the direction that your church is going. Or if you're new, it's a wonderful time to be here. And I should also say that we don't feel that our church is special. We don't feel that we're more important than any other church that is doing work in this region. But what we do accept and what we do understand is that if God has called us to do very specific work, we have to be obedient to that work. And we have a responsibility to you guys in all 3 services to understand what this work is so that you can participate in this work. That's what it actually means to be the church. So you are being invited on a journey today. You are being invited to be a part of something that I can promise you this region has never seen before. So another question that I have for you, and I believe this is on your outline today. Think back in the first century context. Will you be like the people in Capernaum, the people in Galilee, the people in Bethsaida that witnessed the vision of the kingdom, that saw this man named Jesus come through and completely turn everything upside down? People had no hope, now people have hope. People are struggling, people now have victory. People become desperate to be part of what he's doing. It is the only thing, and will always be the only thing, that continues to draw people in. Now, we want to reduce it a lot of times because we're living in Nazareth. What we want to do is we want to say, well, God is capable of this, but God isn't necessarily capable of this. There are all these things that we look at in our local society and say, well, you know what? God can save people. God can maybe make a church grow a little bit. God can do some of these things, but there is no way God can do that. Or there is no way that God can do this. We are going to erase this kind of thinking from our conversation. from our memory. So will you be like these people that saw the vision of the kingdom from village to village to village? Or will you be like the people of Nazareth in Jesus' hometown that reduced the Son of God to the son of a carpenter? We know his brothers. We know his sisters. We know his family. It may seem that he's doing miraculous things, but Jesus is just a good old boy. He's just another one of us, and often we make the same mistake. So as we talk about this vision, and again, this is going to be hashed out a lot over the course of the next few weeks. When we talk about reach, what we're actually talking about is reaching our community with the gospel and the love of Jesus. All right? Reaching our community with the gospel and with the love of Jesus. And as we start to open up talking about some of this stuff, a lot of it you're going to see we are already doing. It's vision stuff that you've actually already known. We've just not talked about it with these specific words. So what this actually means, and we're going to talk about this more next week. This is what next week is going to focus on. We're creating a weekend environment, a Sunday morning service, an experience for people who have given up on church. Now, there are a few of you in here that have maybe transferred here from other churches, but there are many of you in here who did not grow up in church. You actually became a Christian in this church. We did a video a few weeks ago for those of you that were here, Jay Skeens and his wife, Missy Skeens, and he said, what I really loved about this church was that it was for people like me who had fallen through the cracks. They created that kind of environment for me, and we are deeply intentional about that from everything that we do in our Sunday morning service, to our kids' ministry, to the experience that you have whenever you come in the lobby. It is so you can come to this church in a lot of ways that you can't come to other churches. You can come to this church with your baggage. You can come to this church with your questions. You can come to this church for a long period of time simply just not believing anything. We welcome the views that people have about the past that Christians are hypocrites, that they don't want to experience the same things that they experienced when they were young, and that's why they were away from church as long as they were. So this is what we are seeking to accomplish when we talk about this reach portion. Again, more next week. Now, when we talk about serve, this is the outreach component of what we do that is equally, if not more important as far as carrying the gospel and what we've done for a very long time as well. So when we talk about serve, we're talking about meeting the physical and spiritual needs of our community. And what DCC has done over the last several years is we've had a number of different areas of the community that we've taken part in. We've had a number of different things that we've tried to do. And I'm not saying that we're going to do away with every single little thing that we've ever done, but what we did was we made a decision as a senior leadership team to focus our energies and focus our efforts in one particular area. And this has led to the narrow focus of the eradication or the abolishment of addiction in our area. So what we started talking about as we got together, there are hunger issues, there are poverty issues, there are addiction issues. There are a lot of these problems and these situations that we see in our area, but we just kept going back to addiction. Because I believe that if we were to talk about every single person in here, if it's not personally yourself, every person that grew up in this region or that lives in this region, you have a family member, you have a friend, you have a coworker, you have someone that you know very closely that has been impacted by addiction. So we're going to have an opportunity a couple weeks from now to talk about the direction that we are taking with this, kind of a first phase with a Celebrate Recovery, and we're going to hash that out a lot more so that you guys can see what this portion is actually going to look like. This is very, very exciting stuff. And then, of course, the grow portion, which most of you are familiar with, is growing to become more like Jesus through small group communities. Through small group communities. So there is going to continue to be a very strong focus on our small group ministry that meets on Sunday nights, because we believe that our number one call, and Jesus says this in Matthew 28, is our greatest spiritual call is to make disciples. So it's not enough to be a church for unchurched people or people who are just coming to know Jesus. We want to see people grow. We want to see people mature. We want to see people over time live the same way that Jesus would have lived if he were here today. We want to see people that whenever they're going through suffering, whenever they're going through struggling, they're not all of a sudden going back to whatever it was that they were going back to, but they are understanding and fully internalizing that they have something that they can cling to at any given moment in time because Jesus is that good. So these are the things that we're going to show you in 2019. Now, a problem that we started to recognize, all right? Our senior leadership team has been meeting and discussing this over the course of 2018. And as we've discussed this stuff, a lot of it came to us very naturally, very easy, and some of this took weeks and weeks and weeks to carve out. So something I want to say about this vision, and please don't make this mistake, this is not Matt's vision, all right? This is not the pastor's vision. This is a collaborative vision of the senior leadership team that trickles down to our board of directors that is also to be carried by the people of Destination Community Church. So this doesn't fall upon one individual. So this senior leadership team that I'm talking about, this is Josh O'Brien, this is Pastor Lee Boyd, Shanae Kinzer, Pastor Alex Gardner, and Jordan Caldwell. So again, sitting around in a room for months trying to figure out, God, praying, what direction is it that you are sending us? So the biggest obstacle that we run into is that these things are wonderful, and we're really excited about the opportunity to be able to do these things. But physical space, if you guys haven't looked around, physical space is actually an issue. But we have a solution to that issue. And for those of you that were here in our vision series last year, you know that we talked about a building that we had acquired, the old Rescue Squad building that is right over here in mid to late 2017, and we have been praying for a very good period of time. God, are we supposed to use this building? How are we supposed to use this building? God, are we supposed to build onto our current building? What exactly is it that we are supposed to do with this space? Some of you who were here at that time last year have probably also been wondering, what are we going to do with that space? Today I want to share, and again we're going to carve this out and more in the weeks to come, but I want to tell you about what this space over here is going to be used for. And I hope this is exciting. I hope this is striking up things in your imagination, because when I talk about us changing this region, I am talking about this region completely being transformed by the gospel of Christ. And again, the question is, where are you going to fall on that side of belief? So with this building over here, the majority of what we do from a reach component, our Sunday morning service, our kids ministry, the interaction that you guys have whenever you come into the lobby, this building here will continue to primarily be used for those purposes. If we need to change some things about our sanctuary, you guys know we have 3 Sunday morning services. If we need to change some things about our sanctuary, more than likely, that's going to happen here. If we need to expand our kids ministry as far as space, that's the kind of work that's going to happen here. So if you move to the next section of our vision, which is serve, and we talk about meeting the physical and spiritual needs in our community, there is going to be intentional space in this new building for a recovery ministry. I think it'll be 2 or 3 weeks. It's very exciting. And in a couple weeks, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about what this looks like, and really just kind of getting into what a first phase looks like. But we don't believe that we are going to help a few people. and then the following year help a few more people. We believe that through the power of Jesus Christ, when people look at Central Appalachia and talk about addiction in 5 to 10 years, the narrative and the rhetoric is going to be different. All right, because you know what the people in the courts are doing, and a lot of people in social work profession, you know what a lot of them are starting to do? They're starting to recognize that in some sections the problem is growing, and they're starting to actually look to the church, because this is where the solution is. All right, now as we move to the next section, whenever we talk about grow, if you are part of our Sunday evening small groups, which many of you in here are, one thing that you are obviously aware of is that we have grossly ran out of space. And what we're trying to do is we literally rent spaces all over town, from coffee shops to antique stores to restaurants. Some people are kind enough to let us use their office space. So literally we are meeting. It's actually a beautiful thing to see us moving all over town on Sunday nights. And we'll talk about this in the week after that, but we're going from 11 groups to 14 groups, and our discipleship just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And that is a really, really exciting thing. But what we're going to do with this building is we are going to create intentional discipleship space for our small groups so that people have even more familiar territory, and it makes it easier for us to get people into groups because it's literally a walk right over there. You need to drive by after service and see that and dream and imagine yourself. Also, a grow component of this that we're going to talk about that feeds into this is that this building is also going to be used for intentional youth space, all right, intentional student ministry space. So instead of our youth meeting in here, they are going to have space. This should excite every single parent in here that has a kid that's 6th to 12th grade, that they will not only have intentional space on Sunday nights, but also through the week, anytime Pastor Alex is available and they want to come by and they want to hang out. You know, I can tell you this, there are a lot of places that kids that can get into trouble in this area. They are not going to be able to get drugs over there. They are not going to be able to make out over there. I promise, all right? They are not going to be able to do a lot of the things, but whenever they need guidance, whenever they need help, and not just kids in this church, the students of this area are going to have an intentional place that they can come. And what I started to do is we were trying to dream and pray and figure out, because I was asked a lot of questions and I was just like, I am honestly not real sure yet, and that makes me feel stupid and incompetent, but the truth is I'm not real sure. And I started to spend time walking around this building. Most of the time it was very cold. Walking around this building, praying, seeing lives changed, seeing God do work, seeing the impossible happen. And I knew at that point that that was the direction with this building that we were supposed to take. So again, I go back to this question, and I want you to think about this as we dream about the possibilities and the work that God could do, will do. Will you be like the people in Capernaum, Galilee, Bethsaida, all these villages that witnessed the kingdom of God and witnessed the changes brought to earth? Or will you be like the people of Nazareth that reduced the Son of God to the son of a carpenter? Nazareth in this time is a town of 120 to 150 people, smaller than this church. And it's easy to put Jesus in the category of his brothers and his parents, and they did. And as a result of reducing Jesus to simple human status, they missed the miracles of God. And there are many churches in this area, because of reducing God, that are missing the miracles of God and are missing the changes that need to take place in this area. So I really want to put your faith to practice. And I want to ask you this question. Do you really believe what you say you believe? Do you really believe what you say you believe? Well, of course I'm saved. Well, of course when I prayed that prayer, I know I'm going to heaven when I die. But can God take care of your finances? Can God do the miraculous in this region? Can God help you with your depression and anxiety? Can God help your damaged marriage. You see the points that I'm making? We believe that God can take us to heaven one day, but we don't have the practical belief that lets us know that God can actually move mountains here today. We are lacking that. Now, there are 4 kinds of people that are in this room right now. 4 kinds of people. The first are outsiders. All right? Now, I don't use this as derogatory language. You're an outsider. It's not what I'm saying at all. What I mean by outsiders is that this is the first time you've ever been here. Or maybe you've been here several times, but you're just not bought in because you don't believe, you don't like what this church is doing, whatever. All right, so we have people that fall into this category of outsiders. Now, we also have people that are observers. And what observers are the individuals, some of you have been with us for a really long time. And maybe even at one point, you were really, really active and involved. But for whatever reason, now you're here once a month. You're here 2 or 3 times a year. You call Destination Community Church your home church, but you're not here very often. So you're kind of here in spirit in some way, or physically here, but you just kind of watch things happen. All right, there's a lot of you in this room right now that fall into this category. There are also what we would call partial participants. And partial participants are people, maybe occasionally you give. Maybe when you can remember to show up on time, you serve. Maybe you're kind of rooting for DCC and you're involved to some degree. You think outreach is okay, but not something that you really want to participate in. These are what we would call partial participants. And then there's another group of you in here, and this group is a little bit smaller than the others, but these are the owners. These are the individuals that are willing to say, I am completely 100% committed to my church. I understand that it's not about me, that it's about a greater cause. It's about, with this vision, what we're talking about, it's about seeing our family members and our friends that we love so much that have given up on church, coming to know Jesus. It's about solving some of the greatest problems that are in this region through the gospel. It's about taking young believers and surrounding them with other believers in a small group setting so that they can grow. You cannot grow in isolation. It's about truly understanding these things, becoming a volunteer, becoming a giver, becoming a person that says, you know what, I am completely bought in because I want to see people in this area come to know Jesus. I want to see addiction of all kinds completely abolished. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a few weeks. I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol. I'm talking about pornography. I'm talking about codependency. I'm talking about food addiction. I'm talking about anger, anxiety, depression. Anything that puts us in chains is a form of an addiction. I think we need to be careful about how we look at this. So the ultimate question is you consider, for those of you that raised your hands, especially those that raised your hands for wanting to have a spiritual resolution in 2019, become an owner in 2019. Become an owner in 2019. Now, I know I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I can at least gather that there are some of you that are in this room right now, and you've already made the decision, and maybe you've been in this place for a long time. I'm not going to be an owner. I like where I'm at. I'm going to stay where I'm at. This feels really comfortable. I don't want to go any further. I get that, okay? Some of you are there. But there are others of you in here right now, and you're kind of on the fence, and you're thinking, I really, really do want this in my life. I really do want to turn everything over. Those are the individuals that I'm talking to right now. And I'll tell you another thing about Destination Community Church. We can do what we're called to do, but we can't do it all. We are a cog in a wheel of a body of believers that are in this town, potentially part of a lot of different churches. But what we have to do, there's no other option, is we have to be obedient to the vision and the mission and the calling that Christ has on this church. So I want to ask you guys to do something this morning. If you're bought in, and you've been bought in, or you want to be bought in, and you care enough, here in just a minute, I'm going to ask you guys, we had a lot of people at this altar, our first service. I'm going to ask you to come down and pray. I'm not going to call on you to pray. I'm not going to embarrass you. But maybe you need to grab your wife's hand or your husband's hand or a friend's hand, or maybe you just need to come down on your own. And for those of you that serve all services, if you're in leadership or a volunteer, it is going to mean more to others and unify us all if you come down again. If you're not able to come down or you choose not to come down, that is perfectly fine. Nobody's paying attention. You can pray from your seat. But for those of you that are willing, I would like to ask you to come forward at this time for our vision for 2019. Simply come down, kneel down if you're able, and we are going to pray. What we are actually going to do today is I am going to give a period of silence for you to pray. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to lead us in prayer. So if you feel that call this morning, if you know that you want to be a full owner in 2019, I'd like to invite you to come down. Father, we come to you this morning, and we just